Greetings everyone, my name is Gigi and this is Let's Build, wherein I build an interlocking brick set, time to different media, and talk about the facts concerning the topic of the build. Today's build is the Mega Bloks Pokemon Motion Pikachu versus Pokemon Yellow version. Special Pikachu Edition. The footage I'm using for this game is for science, educational, and research purposes. My content is transformative and protected under fair use. All footage is time-lapse with commentary. There will be spoilers for Pokemon. You have been warned. Specifications of the Mega Bloks set. Fully mechanized Pikachu building set designed for adult builders. Includes buildable display case with animated rocky path environment. Turning hand-activated crank activates running motion in legs, feet, and swinging tail. 1,095 bricks and pieces combine with all Mega Pokemon building sets and are compatible with other name brands. Ideal for ages 12 and up, toy helps to develop creativity and problem-solving skills. Officially licensed by the Pokemon Company International. Measures 8.8 inches, 5.4 inches, and 6.4 inches. The Mega Pokemon Collection combines the creativity of building with the wonder of the Pokemon universe. Each set is designed for fans all ages to experience the thrill of catching, training, and battling beloved Pokemon in a whole new way, through construction play. Whether you're recreating classic battles, exploring iconic locations, or displaying your favorite characters, Mega Pokemon building sets bring your imagination to life. From massive legendary Pokemon like Gyarados and Articuno to detailed evolution sets of fan favorites like Squirtle and Dragonite, there's something here for every kind of trainer. Crafted with high-quality pieces and attention to detail, each set offers a rewarding build experience with dynamic poses, special effects, and signature Pokeballs. Some sets even feature motion-activated action to take the experience further. The manual goes right into the build without any fanfare. Side note here, the description mentions a display case. This is incorrect. A case is a protective barrier of some kind. This set has a display pedestal, not a case. Pikachu. Pikachu is a Pokemon species in Nintendo and Game Freak's Pokemon media franchise, and the franchise's mascot. First introduced in the video games Pokemon Red and Blue, it was created by Natsuko Nishida at the request of lead designer Ken Sugimori, with the design finalized by Sugimori. Since Pikachu's debut, it has appeared in multiple games including Pokemon Go and the Pokemon trading card game, as well as various merchandise. While Pikachu has been primarily voiced in media by Ikue Utani, other actors have also voiced the character, including Kate Bristol, Ryan Reynolds, Kaiji Taeng, Hidetoshi Nishijima, Toru Okawa, and Koichi Yamadera. Classified as an electric-type Pokemon, Pikachu is a large yellow mouse with lightning bolt-shaped tail and red sacs on its cheek which can generate large amounts of electricity. Originally designed to be the first part of a 3-stage evolution line in Red and Blue, Pikachu evolves into Raichu through a series of Thunderstone items, which Raichu intended to be able to evolve into Garachu. However, Garachu was removed due to cartridge space concerns, and a pre-evolution for Pikachu, Pichu, was later added in the sequel titles Pokemon Gold and Silver. Pikachu is widely considered to be the most popular and well-known Pokemon species, largely due to its appearance in Pokemon, the anime television series, as the companion of the series protagonist Ash Ketchum. Pikachu has been well received by critics, with particular praise given for its cute design, and it's been regarded as an icon of both the Pokémon franchise and Japanese pop culture as a whole. Conception and development. Pikachu is a species of fictional creatures called Pokémon, created for the Pokémon media franchise. Developed by Game Freak and published by Nintendo, the Japanese franchise began in 1996 with the video games Pokémon Red and Green for the Game Boy, which were later released in North America as Pokémon Red and Blue in 1998. In these games and their sequels, the player assumes the role of a trainer whose goal is to capture and use the creature's special abilities to combat other Pokémon. Some Pokémon can transform into stronger species through a process called evolution via various means, such as exposure to specific items. Each Pokémon have one or two elemental types, which define its advantages and disadvantages when battling other Pokémon. A major goal in each game is to complete the Pokédex, a comprehensive Pokémon encyclopedia, by capturing, evolving, and trading with other trainers to obtain individuals from all Pokémon species. Midway through Red and Blue's development, lead designer Ken Sugimori felt that the game needed more cute Pokémon and was struggling to conceive of such designs. Attributing to his male perspective, he brought in female Game Freak staff including Atsuko Nishida to join the development team. Tasked with developing the Pikachu species and its evolutionary line, she was given specific guidelines to work with, namely its role as an Electric-type Pokémon that evolved twice, and that the final evolution should look strong. Pikachu evolves into Raichu through use of the game's Thunderstone item. Raichu was originally planned to evolve into a Pokémon species dubbed Garachu, but this was cut due to cartridge space concerns. Later in the franchise, Sugimori would create a Pokémon that evolved into Pikachu named Pichu to complete the Trinity. Nishida developed the original Pikachu sprites using a single color identity chosen to work within the Super Game Boy's hardware limitations. Afterwards, the design was finalized by Sugimori, who, towards the end of development, drew the promotional art of all the species given to them in unified look and made any last-minute changes. Design. Standing 0.4 meters or 1 foot 4 inches tall, Pikachu is a bipedal rodent with long ears and feet but short arms. Its fur is yellow, long pointed ears that end in black tips, red cheek sacs, and a tail shaped after the lightning bolt. It has a black pattern on its back, as Nishida felt since this part of the character would face the player during gameplay, it would be better to put something there rather than having it be perfectly smooth. While preliminary designs took inspiration from mice or rabbits, as the Pokémon Rattata already existed at this point in development, she instead modeled the species after squirrels. Nishida stated in an interview that she was obsessed with squirrels at the time due to their comical movement, and had the idea to have Pikachu store electricity in their cheeks similar to how squirrels store food. Creator Satoshi Tajiri, however, chose to change the species to a type of mouse when he was designing the setting. Nishida was helped during the creation process by fellow developer Koji Nishino, who grew fond of Pikachu as a result and constantly encouraged the design to be made cuter, something she was happy to oblige. Due to his fondness for Pikachu, he made it more difficult to find in the original games, joking that he wanted to keep it for himself. Despite initial concerns that players would not be interested in seeking out Pikachu, Sugimori showed the design to the game's development team, where the character was instantly popular. Pikachu's design with the release of Red and Blue was initially pudgier in build, but in media and games that followed was changed over time to have a slimmer waist, straighter spine, and more defined face and neck. According to Sugimori, these changes originated from the anime adaptation of the franchise, where it made Pikachu easier to animate, and were adopted to the games for consistency. The older design was nicknamed Fat Pikachu by fans of the series, was revisited in Pokemon Sword and Shield, where Pikachu received a special in-game Gigantamax form resembling its original design. This Gigantamax form was designed by James Turner, who served as art director for Sword and Shield. Localization and as a mascot. Series director Junichi Masuda stated that Pikachu's name was one of the most difficult to create, due to an effort of wanting to make it appealing both to Japanese and American audiences. The name is derived from a combination of two Japanese onomatopoeia, Pika, meaning the sparking sound, and Chu, the sound a mouse makes. Instantly considered alongside Clefairy as lead characters for franchise merchandising, Pikachu emerged as the mascot of the anime series due to its popularity amongst school children and appeal to both boys and girls. Sugimori felt female players in particular were drawn to cute characters like Pikachu, stating in an interview with Famimaga 64 magazine, "Some girls just collect 50 different Pikachu." The development team considered Pikachu to appeal to a larger demographic due to more closely resembling a pet, believing that those buying merchandise would wish to have one in their home. Masakazu Kobu, a member of the anime's development team, stated that a checklist was involved in making the choice. He stated that their criteria required a warm design, a non-threatening color, a face that could convey emotion, and a vocalization pronounceable by children, and a cute appearance, all of which Pikachu had. Pikachu was additionally selected for the role due to the fact that picking one of Pokemon Red and Blue's 3 starter Pokemon, Bulbasaur, Charmander, or Squirtle, would have created a gap with children who did not select the one used in the anime. Voice. For the vast majority of appearances, Ikue Atani has voiced the character since it was introduced in the Pokemon anime. Atani records new lines for many of Pikachu's reappearances, and stated that despite the similar dialogue, if you don't have a clear understanding of what you want to say in the scene and come up with a plan for your performance, you won't convey anything. Because if there's the same nuance, then it would be just okay to use previously recorded material. In the anime series, Pikachu only speaks using its name. Initially, it was planned for Pikachu to slowly become more adept at human speech as the series progressed, but these plans were dropped during production of the series. Otani voices the role in all languages, which is unlike other Pokemon voice actors, where the actor is different in each country's anime dub. Masuda stated Pikachu's voice was kept consistent across languages, so its name would be universal across the world. Otani has voiced the character in the main series video games, and also reprised the role for every installment of the fighting game crossover series, Super Smash Bros. Digitized recreations of her performance in the anime were used for Pikachu's appearance in Pokemon Yellow, and she later voiced a character from the 2013 games, Pokemon X and Y, until the 2022 game Pokemon Legends Arceus. In all other appearances, Pikachu uses an in-game digital cry, a sound effect used to represent animal cries in the game. This cry had previously been used to represent Pikachu audibly in the main series games prior to X and Y. Other voice actors have voiced Pikachu in English. Kate Bristol briefly portrayed the role in Pokemon the movie I Choose You, for a line of dialogue where Pikachu talks to Ash, with Bristol stating that she attempted to emulate Otani's portrayal for the line. Abby Espiritu portrayed the role in the web series Pokemon Path to the Peak. Espiritu stated that she initially assumed she was portraying Pikachu for a scratch tape before she learned she was portraying him for the role of the series. Appearances. In video games and anime, Pikachu has appeared in all main series Pokemon video games except Pokemon Black and White and its sequels. Pikachu features prominently in the Pokemon anime series and films, which focus on the adventures of the series protagonist Ash Ketchum and his Pikachu. Ash's Pikachu is instantly disobedient, but after Ash saves it from a flock of Spearow, it warms up to Ash, and the pair become friends. Ash journeys to train and capture Pokemon while the members of the villainous organization Team Rocket attempt to steal Ash's Pikachu. The game Pokemon Yellow features a Pikachu, which is given to the player as their first Pokemon. Based on Ash Ketchum's Pikachu from the Pokemon anime, it refuses to stay in its Pokeball, and instead follows the main character around on the screen. The player character can speak to it, and it displays different reactions depending on how it is treated. Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, which are inspired by Yellow, have Pikachu as a starter in one of its two versions. This starter Pikachu has access to several secret techniques and exclusive moves, which are used to progress throughout the game. 7 forms of Pikachu, which wore caps belonging to Ash Ketchum across different seasons of the anime, were released in the games Pokemon Sun and Moon, as well as their Ultra versions via special event distributions, with another round of distributions in Pokemon Sword and Shield, additionally adding one with Ash's cap from Pokemon Journeys, the series. Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, or ORAS, introduced 5 new forms of Pikachu, labeled Cosplay Pikachu, which wore different outfits and could be used in in-game competitions known as Pokemon contests. Pokemon Sun and Moon games also introduced 2 Z Crystals exclusive to Pikachu, which allowed Pikachu to use special one-time use attacks that are more powerful than standard attacks. Outside the main series, Pikachu stars in Hey You Pikachu for the Nintendo 64. The player interacts with Pikachu through a microphone, issuing commands to play various mini-games and act out situations. The game Pokemon Channel follows a similar premise of interacting with the Pikachu, though without the microphone. Poke Park Wii Pikachu's Adventure and its sequel Poke Park 2 Wonders Beyond features a Pikachu as the main protagonist. The game Detective Pikachu features a talking Pikachu who becomes a detective and helps the protagonist, Tim Goodman, solve mysteries. Pikachu appears in the games Pokemon Snap and its sequel, New Pokemon Snap, where the player takes pictures of Pokemon for a score. A Pikachu is one of 16 starters and 10 partners in the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series. Pikachu has appeared in all 5 Super Smash Bros. Crossover fighting games as a playable character, and in the Pokemon fighting game Pokken Tournament in both its normal form and as a Pikachu Libre, based on cosplay Pikachu from Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Pikachu has also appeared in other games such as Pokemon Unite, Pokemon Rumble World, Pokemon Go, and Pokemon Cafe Mix. Following the anime season Pokemon Ultimate Journeys, which concludes the story of Ash and his Pikachu and retires them as main cast characters, another Pikachu named Captain Pikachu was introduced as a major character in the follow-up series, Pokemon Horizons, which features an entirely new cast of characters. Otani portrayed the role of Captain Pikachu. Taito Okiura, the vice president of marketing for the Pokemon Company International, stated that Pikachu would continue to have a significant presence in the animated series and remain an icon for the brand. In other media, for the 2019 live-action film Detective Pikachu, the titular character was portrayed by Ryan Reynolds. Reynolds performed the character's voice work and also did motion capture for the character's face and movements. Due to Reynolds not being on set, co-star Justice Smith would often act his scenes out to an eyeline presenting Pikachu, such as a puppet or a tennis ball. Pikachu's visual appearance in the film was built as if the character was an actual animal, with the visual effects teams creating detailed skeletal and muscular systems for the Pikachu. They visited zoos and consulted animal experts in order to ensure Pikachu's movements were accurate to real-world animals. Pikachu initially started with rabbit-like movement, but eventually evolved movement-wise to have characteristics of multiple species, namely those of marsupials and marmosets. Its eyes were inspired by those of a sugar glider. In order to ensure the design maintained a line between realism and uncanniness, Pikachu's fur frequently changed design. The team would often bring patches of fur to filming locations to see how the colors would respond to the lighting in the area. Hidetoshi Nishijima portrays Detective Pikachu's voice in the Japanese dub of the film. Pierre Tessier voices the character in the French dub of the film. Otani voiced the character in a brief cameo appearance. This appearance is retained in all language versions, barring the German dubbing of the film, which used a slightly deeper and more out-of-breath version of the dialogue. Pikachu is featured in a 2021 Katy Perry music video, Electric. In the Pokemon Adventures manga, main character Red owns and uses a Pikachu. Other manga series, such as Electric Tale of Pikachu and Ash and Pikachu, feature Ash Ketchum's Pikachu from the anime series. In Tale of Electric Pikachu, Ash gives him the name Jean-Luc Pikachu, a reference to Jean-Luc Picard from the Star Trek franchise. On February 27, 2024, The Post, from France, issued a stamp commemorating Pikachu. Pokemon Yellow version, Special Pikachu Edition, often known simply as Pokemon Yellow, or Pokemon Yellow version, is the third Pokemon game for Game Boy released worldwide, as a solitary version of Pokemon Red and Blue versions. In Japan, the game was the fourth Pokemon game released, as a second solitary version of Pokemon Red and Green. Unlike the other games, Pokemon Yellow was inspired by Pokemon the series. Similar to Red and Blue, Pokemon arrived toward the end of the Game Boy's lifespan. It managed, though, to receive the title of second best-selling non-bundled game for its console, losing only to its predecessors. The game was available on the Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console between the Pokémon 20th anniversary on February 27, 2016, and the discontinuation of the 3DS Nintendo eShop, March 27, 2023. Generation 7 remakes, titled Pokémon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, were released worldwide for the Nintendo Switch November 2018 in celebration of Yellow's 20th anniversary in Japan. The player controls the protagonist from the overhead perspective and navigates the fictional region of Kanto in a quest to master Pokémon battling. The goal is to become the champion of the Indigo League by defeating the 8 gym leaders and the top Pokémon trainers in the land, the Elite Four. Another objective is to complete the Pokédex, an in-game encyclopedia, by obtaining all 151 Pokémon. Red and Blue use the Game Link cable, which connects 2 Game Boy systems and allows Pokémon to be traded or battled between games. Both versions feature the same plot, and while they can be played separately, players must trade between both games to obtain all the original 151 Pokémon. Red and Blue were well received, with critics praising the multiplayer options, especially the concept of trading. They received an aggregated score of 89% on game rankings and are considered among the greatest games ever made, perennially ranked on the top of game lists, including at least 4 years on IGN's top 100 games of all time. The games marked the beginning of a multi-billion-dollar franchise jointly selling over 400 million copies worldwide. The Red and Blue versions were remade for Game Boy Advance as Fire Red and Leaf Green from 2004, while Yellow was remade for the Nintendo Switch as Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee from 2018. The originals were re-released on the Virtual Console service for the Nintendo 3DS in 2016 to commemorate their 20th anniversaries. Gameplay. Pokémon Red and Blue are played in a third-person view, overhead perspective, and consist of 3 basic screens: an overworld, in which the player navigates the main character, a side battle view screen, and the menu interface, in which the player may configure their Pokémon items or gameplay settings. The player can use their Pokémon to battle other Pokémon. When the player encounters a wild Pokémon, it is challenged by a trainer. The screen switches to a turn-based battle screen that displays the 2 engaged Pokémon. During a battle, the player may choose to fight using one of up to 4 moves, use an item, switch the active Pokémon, or attempt to flee. However, fleeing is not possible in trainer battles. Pokémon have hit points, HP. When a Pokémon's HP is reduced to 0, it faints and can no longer battle until it is revived. Once an enemy Pokémon faints, the player's Pokémon that were involved in the battle receive a certain number of experience points or EXP. After accumulating enough EXP, a Pokémon will level up. A Pokémon's level controls its physical properties, such as the battle statistics acquired and the moves it has learned. Some Pokémon may also evolve at certain levels. These evolutions affect the statistics and the levels at which new moves are learned. Pokémon at higher stages of evolution gave more statistics each time they level up, although they may not learn new moves as early, or if at all, compared to the lower stages of evolution. Catching Pokemon is another essential element. While battling with a wild Pokemon, the player may throw a Pokeball at it. If the Pokemon is successfully caught, it will come under the player's ownership. Factors in the success rate of capture include the HP of the target Pokemon, whether it is under a status effect, and the type of Pokeball used. The lower the target's HP and the stronger the status effect and type of Pokeball, the higher the success rate of capture. The ultimate goal is to complete the entries in the Pokédex, a comprehensive Pokemon encyclopedia, by capturing, evolving, and trading to obtain all 151 creatures. Pokemon Red and Blue allows players to trade Pokemon between two cartridges via a game link cable. This method of trading must be done to fully complete the Pokédex, since certain Pokemon will only evolve upon being traded, and each of the two games have version-exclusive Pokemon. The link cable also makes it possible to battle another player's Pokemon team. When playing Red or Blue on a Game Boy Advance or SP, the standard GBA/SP link cable will not work. Players must use the Nintendo Universal Game Link cable instead. Moreover, the English versions are incompatible with their Japanese counterparts, and such trades will corrupt the save files, as the games use different languages and therefore character sets. As well as trading with each other and Pokemon Yellow, Pokemon Red and Blue can trade Pokemon with the second generation of Pokemon games, Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal. However, there are limitations. The games cannot link if one player's party contain Pokemon or moves introduced in the second generation of games. Also, using the transfer pack for the Nintendo 64, data such as Pokemon and items from Pokemon Red and Blue can be used in the Nintendo 64 games Pokemon Stadium and Pokemon Stadium 2. Red and Blue are incompatible with the Pokemon games of the later Advanced generation for the Game Boy Advanced and GameCube. Plot. The plot of Yellow is very similar to that of the Japanese Red and Green and Japanese Blue, as well as the Western Red and Blue. The player, canonically known as Red, begins his game in Pallet Town, a small town in the Kanto region, on the same day as his former best friend and now rival. While looking for Professor Oak, who had called both of them to his laboratory, the player tries to leave town, only for Oak to catch up to him 2 steps into Route 1's grassy path. Warning the player about the dangers of walking in tall grass without a Pokemon, Oak himself encounters a wild Pikachu and manages to catch it, before leading the player to his laboratory, where he allows the player to take the single Pokeball containing an Eevee from the desk near him. The rival quickly gets jealous, shoves the player out of his way, and takes the Pokemon for himself. With no other options, Oak gives the player the freshly caught Pikachu, after which the rival challenges the player to a battle. After the battle, Oak allows the 2 new trainers to leave for their journey across Kanto. Right after the rival leaves, the player's Pikachu breaks out of his Pokeball and starts following the player on foot. Stopping in Viridian City's Pokemart, the player will find that a package has come for the professor, and the clerk asks that it be delivered to him. After this has been completed, the professor gives 1 Pokédex to the player and 1 to the rival, and sends them on their way. The rival will then challenge the player to a Pokemon battle with their newly obtained Pokemon, and will continue to battle the player at certain points. While visiting the cities, the player will encounter special establishments called gyms. Inside these buildings are gym leaders, each of which whom the player must defeat a Pokemon battle to obtain a total of 8 gym badges. Once the badges are acquired, the player is given permission to enter the Kanto League in the Indigo Plateau, which consists of the best Pokemon trainers in the region. There, the player will battle the Elite Four, and finally the new Kanto League champion, the player's rival. Throughout, the players battle Team Rocket, a criminal organization that uses Pokemon for various crimes. They devise numerous plans for stealing rare Pokemon, which the player must foil. Some of the differences. The Japanese release has one set of in-game color palettes, while the international releases of Pokemon Yellow have 2 separate sets for different game systems. The front Pokemon sprites have all been updated to resemble how they appear in their then-current Ken Sugimori artwork, usually used in promotional images and strategy guides for the Japanese Red and Green, Japanese Blue, and Western Red and Blue, as well as some of them resembling how they appear in Pokemon the series. However, the back sprites are the same as in the previous game. Some trainer sprites were also redone. Red and Blue now better resemble their stock artwork for Generation 1, as the Pokemon sprites do. Brock wears an outfit like his animated counterpart, and Misty's bikini was changed to a shirt and shorts similar to those worn by her counterpart in the anime. Blaine has a different overworld sprite, this time clearly showing him wearing glasses. Giovanni uses a Persian in the battle at the Viridian Gym, referencing Giovanni owning a Persian in Pokemon the series. All policemen were recast as Officer Jennies, and all Pokemon Center ladies were recast as Nurse Joys, attended by Chanseys. Jesse and James have their own individual overworld sprites, and share group battle in sprite. The newly introduced Pikachu sprite is used in the overworld for the player's Pikachu. This sprite also used as the icon for any Pikachu or Raichu in the party, instead of using the Clefairy-like icon from earlier games. If a Pikachu owned by the player uses Surf outside of battle, this Pikachu appears as a Surfing Pikachu sprite instead of the generic Aquatic sprite. Some Pokemon received new sprites that show their individual appearance more clearly instead of using generic icons shared by multiple Pokemon. Bulbasaur, Sandshrew, Clefairy, Jigglypuff, and Oddish and Chansey, however, much like Snorlax, since the previous games, those new sprites only appear in the overworld since they use their old genetic sprites in the party. Kanto is slightly redesigned a second time, featuring different designs for doors, signposts, windows, and other minor elements. In the Japanese version of Pokemon Yellow, the player character Red has a Super Famicom in his bedroom, as opposed to the Famicom in the Japanese versions of Pokemon Red, Green, and Blue. However, in the international versions of all Generation 1 games, the player has an SNES instead. The credits of Pokemon Yellow now include Gengar as the 16th Pokemon silhouette, as opposed to the previous games with only 15 silhouettes in the credits. Location changes. In some locations, trainers who reference characters from Pokemon the series replace previous trainers. 2 extra trainers, a lass and another bug catcher, were added to the Viridian Forest. In the Cinnabar Gym, The player must now take the Quiz Machines quiz before they can battle the trainer stationed nearby. The bicycle theme does not play on Route 23 or on Victory Road. Cerulean Cave has a completely different layout. Changes were made to the locations and availability of Pokémon. Some changes may have been made to reinforce the animation-based setting. Pikachu and Raichu are removed from all availability in the wild, leaving only the player's Pikachu, who cannot evolve. In an episode, Ash catches a Caterpie and a Pidgeotto in Viridian Forest. In the game, Pidgey and Pidgeotto have been added to Viridian Forest. Additionally, although both Caterpie and Weedle are available in previous games, only Caterpie is now available. The player can now also obtain all 3 of the original Kanto first-party Pokémon at Cerulean City, Route 24, and Vermilion City, referencing the 3-episode arc where Ash recruits them. The Pokémon that Team Rocket uses, Coughing, Ekans, Meowth, and their evolutions, are no longer available to be caught in the wild. In-game trades are changed to different Pokémon, and 2 trades are removed from the game completely. Farfetch'd and Lickitung, previously available only through in-game trades, now appear as wild Pokémon. Abra, previously available on the routes north of Cerulean City, has now been relocated to the 4 routes surrounding Saffron City. A trash can was added between the table and the wall in Professor Oak's laboratory. This forces the players to be located south of the table, instead of going around it, when trying to interact with the Eevee Pokeball at the start of the game, which triggers the cutscene where the rival pushes the player to the side and obtains his first partner instead. Gameplay changes. Pikachu is the only first partner Pokémon the player can receive, referencing the first episode. This Pikachu travels alongside the player on screen outside of the Pokeball, just like Ash's Pikachu, who disliked being inside one. It will also cry like Ash's Pikachu in Pokémon the series, with its cries now voiced by Ikue Utani. This Pikachu cannot be evolved or released, referencing 2 certain episodes. The rival starts with Eevee. He will eventually have a different team based around one of the Eevee's evolutions, depending on how the player fares in the first 2 battles with the rival, the second one being completely optional, at Professor Oak's laboratory on Route 22. If the player wins both, Eevee evolves into a Jolteon. If the player wins at the lab and loses or skips Route 22, Eevee evolves into Flareon. If the player loses at the lab, Eevee evolves into Vaporeon. A minimum friendship system is implemented to track how Pikachu feels about the player. Gym leaders have different teams and movesets, some based on those that appear in Pokémon the series. Level up, learn sets, and TM compatibility are altered slightly for certain Pokémon. Charizard, for example, can now learn Fly via HM02. If the player does not have $500, they can still enter the Safari Zone. The player will have to pay any money that they do not have, and will receive a number of Safari Balls proportional to the amount paid, but at least one. Kinesis is given to Kadabra as its signature move. In previous games, Kinesis was never used, and the only way it might appear would be if randomly called by Metronome. A new mode, Coliseum 2, was added to the Cable Club. The Viridian City Pokemart now sells potions. The NPC complaining about potions not being sold in Pokemon Red and Blue now states that the mart finally sells them again. In-game opponents have altered movesets, where their Pokemon may use moves that aren't exclusively learned by level up, unlike the opponent movesets encountered in Pokemon Red, Blue, and Green. Storyline changes. The chain of events leading to the player obtaining their first partner Pokemon is slightly different. The player now takes one step further into the tall grass before Professor Oaks comes along. Now himself standing in the tall grass, Oak encounters a wild Pikachu and immediately catches it before leading the player back to his laboratory. Instead of giving the player in Blue the choice between Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle, Professor Oak tells each player to take the single Pokeball off his desk containing Eevee, but Blue shoves the player out of the way and takes the Pokeball instead. The old man in Viridian City now must be spoken to before going to the Viridian Forest. He attempts to demonstrate how to catch a Pokemon, fails, and leaves to get more Pokeballs from the Viridian Pokemart. The player can visit the Pokemart to ask him to repeat the tutorial. Jesse and James appear through the game, replacing grunts from the previous games in 4 different places. They are involved in Team Rocket's scheme and are typically found before the battle with Giovanni. Though they are named Rocket, like any Team Rocket grunt, they have distinct overworld and in-battle sprites. Setting: Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow take place in the region of Kanto, which is based on the real-life Kanto region in Japan. This one distinct region known in later games with different geographical habitats for the 151 existing Pokemon species, along with their human-populated towns and cities and routes connecting locations with one another. Some areas are only accessible once the player learns a special ability or gains a special item. Kanto has multiple settlements: Pallet Town, Viridian City, Pewter City, Cerulean City, Vermilion City, Lavender Town, Celadon City, Fuchsia City, Saffron City, Cinnabar Island, and Indigo Plateau. 4 and final rival boss occur at the Indigo Plateau. Areas in which they can catch Pokemon range from caves such as Mount Moon to the sea, where the kinds of Pokemon available to catch varies. For example, Tentacool can only be caught either through fishing or when the player is in a body of water, but Zubat can only be caught in a cave. Development: the game developer Satoshi Tajiri pitched the concept of Pokemon to Nintendo's staff in 1990 and was met with skepticism. They believed his ideas were too ambitious and found it difficult to see the appeal. However, Shigeru Miyamoto saw great potential in the idea and convinced the company to go ahead with the project. The initial concept for Pokemon stemmed from the hobby of insect collecting, a popular pastime which Tajiri enjoyed as a child. While growing up, however, he observed more urbanization taking place in the town where he lived, and as a result, the insect population declined. Tajiri noticed that kids now played in their homes instead of outside, and he came up with the idea of a video game containing creatures that resembled insects called Pokemon. He thought kids could relate with the Pokemon by individually naming them, and then controlling them to represent fear or anger as a good way of relieving stress. However, Pokemon never bleed, nor do they die in battle, only faint. This was a very touchy subject for Tajiri, as he did not want to further fill the gaming world with pointless violence. The concept of trading Pokemon was inspired by a frustrating experience Tajiri had while playing Dragon Quest II, the Luminaries of the legendary line. Tajiri was attempting to obtain an item that could only be obtained by a rare drop from an enemy, but he was not able to acquire it. Ken Sugimori was also playing Dragon Quest II at the time and was able to acquire 2 of the rare item. Wishing to obtain Sugimori's extra copy, Tajiri attempted to figure out if it was possible to trade items between the games, but realized this was not possible on the Famicom. When the Game Boy released, Tajiri thought the system was perfect for his idea, especially because of the link cable, which he envisioned would allow players to trade Pokemon with each other. This concept of trading information was new to the video game industry, because previously connection cables were only being used for competition. I imagined a chunk of information being transferred by connecting 2 Game Boys with special cables, and I went, wow, that's really going to be something, said Tajiri. Upon hearing of the Pokemon concept, Shigeru Miyamoto suggested creating multiple cartridges with different Pokemon in each, noting that it would assist the trading aspect. Tajiri was also influenced by Square's Game Boy game, The Final Fantasy Legend, which he said gave him the idea that more than just action games could be developed for the Game Boy. The main characters were named after Tajiri himself as Satoshi, who is described as Tajiri in his youth, and his longtime friend, role model, mentor, and fellow Nintendo developer, Shigeru Miyamoto as Shigeru. Ken Sugimori, an artist and longtime friend of Tajiri, headed the development of drawings and designs of the Pokemon, working with a team of fewer than 10 people who conceived the various designs for all 151 Pokemon. Etsuko Nishida created the designs for Pikachu, Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, and many others. Sugimori, in turn, finalized each design, drawing the Pokemon from various angles in order to assist Game Freak's graphics department in properly rendering the creature. Originally called Capsule Monsters, the title went through several transitions due to trademark problems, becoming Capumon and Capumon with a K, before eventually settling upon Pocket Monsters. Tajiri always thought that Nintendo would reject his game, as the company did not really understand the concept at first. However, the games turned out to be a success, something that Tajiri and Nintendo never expected, especially because of the declining popularity of the Game Boy. Tajiri said that the Pokeball concept was inspired by Ultra 7's Capsule Monsters from the Tokusatsu superhero television series Ultra 7, ran from 1967 to 1968. Nintendo spent $13 million marketing Pokemon Red and Blue in the United States. Music. The game's music was composed by Junichi Masuda, who used the 4 sound channels of the Game Boy to create both the melodies and the sound effects and the Pokemon cries heard upon encountering them. He composed the opening theme with battle scenes in mind, using white noise to sound like marching music and imitate a snare drum. Masuda wrote the music at his home on a Commodore Amiga computer, which only features PCM sample playback, and converted to the Game Boy with a program he had written. Release. In Japan, Pocket Monsters Red and Green were the first versions released. Development was completed by October 1995, and release was originally planned for December 1995, but was delayed until February 27, 1996, because the derivative products were not yet ready for sale. After a slow start, they continued to sell well. Several months later, Pocket Monsters Blue was released in Japan, as well as mail-order-only special edition to subscribers of CoroCoro comic on October 15, 1996. It was later released to general retail on October 10, 1999. It features updated in-game artwork and new dialogue. Using Blastoise as its mascot, the code, script, and artwork for Blue were used for the international releases of Red and Green, which were renamed Red and Blue. The Japanese Blue edition features all but a handful of Pokémon available in Red and Green, making certain Pokémon exclusive to the original editions. To create more interest, Tajiri revealed an extra Pokémon called Mew, hidden within them, which he believed created a lot of rumors and myths about the game, and kept interest alive. The creature was originally added by Shigeki Morimoto as an internal prank and was not intended to be exposed to consumers. It was not until later that Nintendo decided to distribute Mew through a Nintendo promotional event. However, in 2003, a glitch was discovered which allowed players to obtain Mew without relying on official Nintendo events. During the North American localization of Pokémon, a small team led by Hiro Nakamura went through the individual Pokémon, renaming them for Western audiences based on their appearances and characteristics after approval from Nintendo. In addition, during this process, Nintendo trademarked the 151 Pokémon names in order to ensure that they would be unique to this franchise. During the translation process, it became apparent that simply altering the text from Japanese to English was impossible. The game had to be entirely reprogrammed from scratch due to the fragile state of their source code, a side effect of the unusually lengthy development time. Therefore, the games were based on the more modern Japanese version of Blue, modeling its programming and artwork after Blue, but keeping the same distribution of Pokémon found in the Japanese Red and Green cartridges. As the finished Red and Blue versions were being prepared for release, Nintendo allegedly spent over $50 million on promotion, fearing the series would not be appealing to American children. The Western localization team warned that the cute monsters may not be accepted by American audiences, and instead recommended they be redesigned and beefed up. Then President of Nintendo, Hiroshi Yamauchi, refused and instead viewed the game's possible reception in America as a challenge to face. Despite these setbacks, the programmed Red and Blue versions with their original creature designs were eventually released in North America on September 28, 1998, over 2.5 years after Red and Green debuted in Japan. The games were received extremely well by the foreign audiences, and Pokémon went on to become a lucrative franchise in America. The same versions were later released in Australia sometime later in '98, and in Europe on October 5, 1999. Being the second-to-last video game released for the original Game Boy in Europe, with Pokémon Yellow version Special Pikachu Edition being the last. Pokémon Yellow release. Pokémon Yellow has been received well by critics, holding an aggregated score of 85% from game rankings as their fifth highest rated Game Boy game of all time. The Sarasota Herald Tribune recommended Yellow as a good game for children. RPG Fan called it so revoltingly addictive that any player of it has no choice but to catch 'em all. They also called Yellow insulting in how limited the additions from Red and Blue were. Giving the game a perfect score, IGN's Craig Harris praised the mechanics, commenting that Yellow was the best game of the three to start with. GameSpot's Cameron Davis called it a stopgap to appease players until the release of Gold and Silver, commenting that the new challenges are enough to fill the hole, but only just. Game Daily's Chris Baffa listed it as one of the best Pokemon games, commenting that while it was a rehash, there was enough that was new to warrant playing. All Games' Brad Cook commented that for those who did not play Red and Blue, Yellow was good, but otherwise he advised that they wait until Gold and Silver. The Daily Telegraph's Steve Boxer commented that while it had good gameplay mechanics, it was held back by the lack of features. He described Nintendo's actions as avaricious, commenting that Yellow marks the point where Pokemon ceases to become a game and becomes a marketing exercise obsession satisfier. Pokemon Yellow received 2 nominations, Game of the Year and Console Game of the Year, during the 3rd Annual Interactive Achievement Awards. I purchased and built this set before the partnership with LEGO and Pokemon, when Mega Bloks had the license with Pokemon. I am personally excited to find out what LEGO comes up with and to compare the builds. Building this set did not come with the quality of life upgrades that I am accustomed to building with so many LEGO sets. Honestly, this set builds much like many of the no-name sets. Not what you would associate with the largest competitor for building blocks to LEGO. The pieces and motion action are not as smooth fitting, but I have it on top of a shelf for display only, so I don't personally have to worry about it breaking apart. I have seen other people in the comments for reviews state that when they tried to crank it, it would ultimately explode on them, pieces going everywhere. I still have an original Pokemon Yellow version Special Pikachu Edition cartridge, which was given to me by a good friend of mine, and it was sent in to have the battery changed so that it still functions. Total build time today, 3 hours, 57 minutes, 8 seconds. You could watch 10 full episodes and 17 minutes of the 11th episode of the animated series Pokemon Indigo League. Or you could watch Pokemon the first movie at 57 minutes, Pokemon Movie 2000 at 82 minutes, and Pokemon 3, the movie, at 74 minutes. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Remember to like, subscribe, share, comment, ring that bell, all the things for the YouTubes. Thank you.